I'm so glad Star Trek realized it wasn't too late to fix TNG's two biggest romance mistakes. Romance has never been Star Trek's strong suit, especially in the earlier days of the Next Generation. As the show evolved beyond its no-conflict edict and started embracing more emotional nuance, it still struggled to give its characters fulfilling romantic arcs. Fans spent decades frustrated by two of the show's most glaring missed opportunities: the doomed potential between Captain Jean-Luc Picard and Dr. Beverly Crusher, and the abrupt, unsatisfying end to the evolving bond between Worf and Counselor Deanna Troi. But after years of unresolved tension and head-scratching decisions, Star Trek finally did something extraordinary. It acknowledged those mistakes and made them right. It's rare for a decades-old sci-fi franchise to admit that it fumbled character arcs, let alone course-correct them after so long. And yet, Star Trek Picard did just that. Across 3 seasons, especially in its emotionally rich final year, Picard proved it's never too late for redemption, not just for people, but for storytelling itself. Let's talk about how Star Trek finally gave fans the romantic closure they'd waited more than 30 years to see, and why it matters so much that these two relationships were finally honored with the depth and dignity they deserved. 1. Picard and Crusher, the star-crossed ship that finally sailed. From the very first episode of The Next Generation, there was an unspoken tension between Captain Picard and Dr. Beverly Crusher. Fans learned that the two had a shared past, one marred by the death of Beverly's husband, Jack, who served under Picard's command. The guilt and mutual respect between them gave their relationship a deeply layered foundation, but for 7 seasons, the show danced around the idea without committing. There were moments, glimpses into what could be. The infamous episode Attached literally linked their thoughts, revealing the depth of their mutual affection. But nothing came of it. Not really. By the time TNG wrapped with Star Trek Nemesis, any hope for Picard and Crusher's romance seemed dead in the water. The movies all but ignored Beverly as a serious character, and her screen time and narrative importance shrank with each appearance. Then came Star Trek Picard, and everything changed. Season 3 opened with a shocking revelation. Not only had Picard and Crusher rekindled their relationship at some point after Nemesis, but Beverly had secretly given birth to their son, Jack Crusher Jr., and raised him alone, fearing for his safety in a galaxy full of political intrigue and personal vendettas. This twist was controversial. Some fans bristled at the secrecy, and others questioned the choice to create a new character so late in the game. But what followed was a remarkable journey of emotional reckoning. Instead of skimming over the past, Picard forced its characters to confront it. Picard, now older and more emotionally open, faced his failings head-on. He questioned his decisions, his fear of connection, and his own worthiness as a father and partner. Beverly, too, had to explain her isolation and pain. For the first time in the franchise's history, Star Trek gave their relationship the space it needed to grow. And the result? Beautiful, bittersweet, and earned. Their chemistry, still present after decades, wasn't presented as a sudden rekindling of romance, but as two people finally brave enough to look at each other honestly. It's not a fairy tale, it's real. The messy, human truth of what happens when two people love each other, but carry too much weight to admit it. That honesty, more than any dramatic twist, was what made the arc so powerful. By the finale, Picard and Crusher had built something new, rooted in shared responsibility, love for their son, and mutual respect. They weren't starry-eyed lovers in space. They were two people who had lived full lives, separately and painfully, who were finally choosing to walk forward together. For longtime fans, it was vindication. After decades of longing, Star Trek didn't just gesture at closure, it delivered it. 2. Worf and Troi, the relationship that deserved better than a one-episode retcon. Of all TNG's late-stage surprises, none was more controversial or more misunderstood than the short-lived romance between Worf and Deanna Troi. Introduced awkwardly in the final season, with little build-up and even less screen time, their budding relationship was capped by a few moments of affection and an open-ended implication that it might go somewhere. Someday. Except it never did. Star Trek First Contact, the next canonical appearance for both characters, pretended the romance never happened. Worf went on to Deep Space Nine and married Jadzia Dax. Troi returned to being defined largely by her past with Riker. It was as if Worf and Troy's connection had been a collective hallucination. Fans who found the pairing intriguing were left with nothing, no breakup, no conversation, no explanation. This erasure didn't just frustrate fans of the Worf-Troi dynamic, it also undermined both characters. Worf, whose growth throughout TNG and DS9 made him one of the franchise's richest characters, never got a chance to explore how that relationship changed him. And Troi, too often sidelined as the empathic counselor, was denied a romantic arc that challenged and elevated her. Enter Picard Season 3, and once again, Star Trek quietly made things right. Worf's return in Picard was met with immediate fan praise. Now older, wiser, and even a little funnier, this version of Worf wasn't just a stoic warrior anymore. He was a fully realized man, reflective, balanced, even philosophical. And while much of his story focused on honor, loyalty, and his role in the larger plot, Picard didn't forget to acknowledge Worf's past with Deanna. In a brief but poignant scene, Worf and Troi speak honestly about their former romance. It's not a punchline. It's not dismissed. It's addressed with tenderness and maturity. They both acknowledge it meant something and that it ended. Not badly, not dramatically, but because life moved on. For longtime viewers, this moment was everything. It didn't rewrite history or shoehorn in a rekindled flame. Instead, it gave closure where none had existed. And that's what Picard understood so well. Not every relationship has to end in forever to matter. What Worf and Troi had was real. It was short, complicated, maybe even ill-timed. But it was meaningful. And Star Trek, after all these years, finally honored that truth. Why fixing these mistakes mattered. In a franchise that spans galaxies, the most powerful moments often come down to small, human truths. Love, regret, forgiveness, connection. The Next Generation was a show of its time, pioneering, cerebral, and often emotionally restrained. But its characters resonated because of their potential. We believed in the person Picard could be if he ever let himself love. We saw Worf's struggle between duty and emotion. We rooted for Troi to find happiness beyond the confines of her role. And we watched, sometimes frustrated, as these possibilities went unfulfilled. So when Picard took the time to revisit those threads, it wasn't just fan service, it was justice. It was the show finally giving its characters the arcs they had earned. Fixing these romantic mistakes wasn't about happy endings per se. It was about respect. Respect for the characters, for the fans, and for the stories that mattered. Star Trek's emotional evolution. Star Trek has come a long way. What began as a bold vision of the future has grown into a sprawling, emotional tapestry that embraces vulnerability, love, and humanity as core components of its storytelling. Picard Season 3 stands as a